Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Chapelwaite. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, we had that opening situation, which we had that woman, Faith, having a baby, a boy who was born with kind of a deformity of kind of like the situation where like kind of where his nose should be, as well as having no eye. So the question like that kind of comes up later on as whispers around about that come about throughout town. It's like, oh, because of her past. I don't know whether they mean that literally as like, oh, she slept with multiple men in a sense, so that's why she's getting the reputation of being a quote unquote whore, or is it because she legitimately was a prostitute or something? Because she hints about her past at certain points in the episode that it's like right before I met you. We'll get to that in a second. Before she met, you know, the minister. But I'm like, and then she also sounds like she's on the run from something from her past. It's like, right, they'll find me or something. I'm like, I don't know whether it's like that's why I'm like, is it kind of like a pimp situation in a sense that she was a lady of the night type of situation? I don't know what to make of that. Because that's why I'm like, I don't know if it's just like they're trying to paint her as promiscuous, in particular Alice, because she's the very like holier than thou. Her dad owns the church and everything. So like she, you know, but the moment Alice started talking mad shit about like, oh, like the father, it must be a coward and all that stuff, and talking about Faith and the baby, it's like, I don't blame the baby. I blame, she's putting it more on Faith as well as the man she was sleeping with. And I was like, the way the minister was acting, I was like, nah, it was you. You're the other man. And it's like, yeah, it is. It's like, oh, all that holier than thou stuff. And it's like, oh, the one that's having the affair with her is your husband. So shame, shame, shame. You know, that it's I think that's the biggest irony behind it. And there's like just that one, just like her whole attitude of like, she wants, it's like, because she's already saying that you're the father of that baby has to be someone in town. A lot of people are wondering whether or not it's their husbands. For her, it's like, it doesn't matter. Like, this child, if I alone am enough to take care of this child, so beyond that, like, it's not anyone else's concern. But even her being like, oh, my husband, he's taking an interest in like your predicament, stuff like this. She's like, well, he's kind. It's like, like she has some thoughts in her head. Like, there's probably some level of part of her that does know it's her husband, but like she just doesn't want to believe it. It's like, no, there's no way my husband. No, my husband would never do that. That would never happen to me. Like, it's like that's something that would happen to other women, but not. I think that's kind of like she's got that air about her. She's like arrogant, because even to the point of what she was saying earlier, even the minister being like, you know, you sound a lot like your father, Alice. You know, so I don't know. We'll see. Like I said, I think she has her suspicions, but maybe she doesn't quite want to believe it because she doesn't believe it would happen to her. So there's that element to it. Obviously, there's also the aspect of like, cool, what happened to Edward? It's like, that dude Daniel was like, I have no idea. It's like, right, what did that idiot do? It's like, you guys are the one that kind of slid it to him to be like, hey, burn that place to the ground. That idea was kind of floating in his head, and none of you really stopped him. All she knows is that her husband, like, oh yeah, Susan, our daughter, caught him leaving with the wagon, and that's about it. We haven't seen hide nor hair of him. Daniel was kind of like, oh, we'll see if we're going to find him at work. Because there's other moving pieces to all of this. Obviously, the kids are trying to go to school, which obviously they've got to deal with other douchebag kids. Because it seemed like the only person in town who's willing to give him a shot. The minister doesn't seem like he holds as much of a grudge. I mean, obviously, even the sheriff in town has his issues with them. But Mary's like the only one that doesn't have, well, she has an ulterior motive though, because it's fuel for her story. But even then, it's kind of, I mean, it takes away some of the altruism of like, you're sticking up for this family. It's like, I guess, because she even talks about it, it's like, right, I know what it's like to kind of be the oddball, being a woman, like how people kind of look down on you and kind of assume they know all there is to know about you. So that's why when it comes to her children, when it comes to Charles' children or even his ambitions, she understands what it's like to kind of have those ambitions and for people to kind of pigeonhole you into who they believe you to be. Like, she knows that better than anyone, because Charles has an idea to bring prosperity to this town, that basically he's going to like have like, he wants to hire a whole bunch of men to do work for him, and kind of he wants to make sure everyone gets paid, but not everyone's too happy about it. In particular, Alice's father is the biggest, like, obstacle in the way, because it's a small town, and if anyone sides with a Boone, it's just, like, you're going to be damned in the eyes of everyone else. Plus, it's already, like, because it's like, even if people who don't feel as strongly, because it's like, man, we need this money, this town needs that money, but it's like, right, the public ridicule you'll suffer, you'll be looked down upon if you were to take that money, the blood money, as they say. But Charles wants to make it, it's like, right, I want to expand business here. I want to make it a profitable thing. It isn't just going to be me that's going to be making money. I'm trying to make equal wages for everyone, because he makes the whole conversation about whalers. It's like the people on top are the ones who do fine. The ones on bottom doesn't work out for them. But even Rebecca being like, yeah, it doesn't work out especially well for the whales either. And he was like, yeah, they are the ones that kind of get screwed over potentially the most when it comes to the whole whaling business. But they hinted to it early on, which I thought was interesting. The whole Stephen and Philip argument. Not early on, but at one point, that dude, was it Joseph Palmer, was kind of like, a lot of people in this town will not listen to your proposal because of what Philip and Stephen did. Now, what they did, we haven't really still gone over. Like, I guess they were just a straight up menace or evil to this town. Like, maybe they ruled it with an iron fist or something. And it's also right, your grandmother always fell silent. So I guess it's like, she had the power to stop any of this, to change things, but she never did. She just, I guess the town of preachers, corners, like, just their cries for help just fell on deaf ears when it came to her. So maybe that's what, just like, so from top to bottom, this family is just, in this town's eyes, the Boone family is garbage, is evil. Even later on, Susan's mom is kind of saying, like, oh, we know how they got that land. So it's kind of like they made like, she said they made a deal. So either like they made some shady business deal in the sense of like they screwed some people out of it. It could be taken that way. I immediately took it as like, they made a deal with the devil type of thing. That's why that family is considered evil. That, like, and I guess that's also why they're like, right, you got that great piece of land and that home, but it's, you made a deal with the devil, and like the backlash is us. We have to suffer the consequences. We have to pay the price, and that, like, people in this town get sick. Hell, even the minister lost he lost twins to the illness. But even Charles was like, do you blame me for the twins' death? And he's like, of course not. But I'm like, the look on his face makes me think, I'm sure his wife will, but him himself, I don't know. Because also there is a thing of him having an affair with Faith, that it's like, he's the one that's saying, like, God gave us this child, so we're gonna work hard. Like, doesn't this child deserve the strength of our love? It's like, she's willing to fight and love this child, and so is he. And it's like, let's run away to California. There's always a problem with married, fair situations, because it's like, he's always like, I'm gonna leave my so and so soon enough. I'm gonna leave my significant other soon enough. Oh, just wait. It's like, yeah, you're gonna be waiting forever, because there's always gonna be something that comes up, because it's like, especially in this time period, like, women are going to get it the worst. We see all the whispers, and yeah, a man's reputation is one thing, but a woman's reputation gets dragged through the mud a lot more with the whole promiscuity, as well as, like, like I said, just being a quote unquote whore and all that stuff. So we'll see kind of whether that will work out. Will he actually leave his wife or not? I don't think he will. Also, there's that weird lady that popped up earlier when Charles was on his way, leaving, like, riding on the horse, and runs into her. She's in the middle of the road, bites an apple, and as he's leaving, the worm is calling. I'm like, okay. And then she's immediately outside of Faith's house, just like chilling. And then, like, after Alice leaves, she looks out the window, and like Faith doesn't see her anymore. So I'm like, okay, who the hell is that lady? Is she just one of those, like, weirdos in town who knows what's what? Or, like, is she kind of like an ostracized? Is she going to be like the witch of the town? Like, oh, she's just that weirdo that lives out in the woods? Or is there something else? I don't know. It's just sad that, like, Charles can't escape. Like, it's not just him that can't escape. His kids can't either. Obviously, at school, Loa getting tripped. Hell, even, well, yeah. And then, like, that kid was like, oh, I'm like, is he really offering help? He was just snickering too. And then he breaks her necklace. I was like, you little shit. And it's like, for her, it's like, that's the last reminder of her mom. Like, it sounds like it wasn't just like, it was something from their mom. It wasn't like, either it was something made by their mom, or it was something of hers that she gave Loa. So it means the world to her. So when it goes missing later on, she blames her brother Tane for it. But he's like, I didn't do it. And Honor's like, yeah, like, he's not lying. Because we see that there was some, like, figure in her room. And at first I was like, is that supposed to be Steven? Turns out that's who's the one that killed Edward last episode and all of this. Like, it's him. And I'm assuming it has to deal with this worm thing, as in, like, I'm curious when they say, like, the worm, because this whole motif around worms and stuff like that, that's kind of going around, like, well, not motif, but, like, it's used kind of in the horror elements of this, that I'm wondering, is it, like, a central worm? Like, I think I brought it up in the premiere, like, is it going to be like a worm that gets inside your head and just kind of starts eating your brain and turns you into a psychopath? Are we kind of going down that route? Is it more of a supernatural, like, the worm is like one entity, or is it multiple? Like, is it kind of like Oogie Boogie? Oogie Boogie from Halloween Town, from the, God, what's the actual movie? Nightmare Before Christmas. I cannot remember. I always associate Halloween Town just because Kingdom Hearts screwed me up in that, because I always remember the town of Halloween Town just to never remember the movie's name. Regardless, I'm wondering, is he supposed to be like Oogie Boogie from Nightmare Before Christmas, where it's like he's made up of multiple bugs, and there's like one central bug that kind of like controls all of them. So it's like, is that it? Like, this whole thing is associated with worms, but there's like one main evil worm that's controlling everything, and it kind of works like a parasite that gets inside of your head and then like drives you insane and controls you. Because we see even Steven has a moment of that in this episode. This thing was in the trailer. The exact scene was in the trailer. It still, like, made my skin crawl seeing, like, him pulling the worm out and him cutting his nose. I'm like, yeah, I think I'm starting to realize, like, oh, body horror is what I can't stand. Like, I don't have anything against it, but it messes me up the most. Out of any form of horror, it seems like body horror is the one that screws me up the most. I've kind of realized that more and more. Because it's just like, oh, him cutting into his nose, it just made me so uncomfortable. Which is interesting, because obviously there's, like, because Susan had, like, showed up at their place, and she was like, is my papa here? I was like, it speaks volumes that she showed up at the place that her father was on his way to when he was brutally murdered by, we now know, Steven. So, but then she snaps out of it, and then Rebecca takes her back home, and it's like, oh, how dare you? I'm like, I was about to say, your kid rolled up at their place. You should be a little ashamed of yourself. The fact is your daughter snuck out. You didn't even know where she was. So that kind of falls back on you a little bit, lady. But also, it's like, it is a thing of like, right, that place is cursed. So you think they're like Pied Pipering your daughter there just to lead her to darkness and death. I don't know. But at the time, you know, there was a conversation about, like, you know, what the illness does to you. It confuses you. You become restless. And then, like, hard cut to, like, you know, all that's happening. We're leading into, like, that scene with Charles with the whole worms and cutting his nose thing, which he is a little restless because he's hearing stuff in the walls. But it's like, once again, Loa last episode is, I don't hear anything. But he was like, oh, that's just him being clever. It's like, oh, cool. Once again, how much of this is just supernatural stuff of like, oh, like there's something here, or is it just kind of like, nah, you're going legitimately crazy? Which obviously he's going to think that as well, because it's like, right, my father went completely insane. Apparently Steven and Uncle Phil were insane, so now I'm potentially insane. Like, is the males in this family predisposed to that? Because it does seem like it's only a male issue. Like his dad, his cousin, his uncle. Beyond that, like his grandmother being silent, like, who knows? You know, is that family? Like, did they make a deal with the devil? Are they straight up cursed? Or is it a combination of, because you made a deal with the devil, there has to be a price to be paid, and you're cursed because of that? I skipped over it from earlier in the episode, but Rebecca did find these letters from her father, which we kind of dived into that a little bit this episode. Basically, like, we didn't really get to, I'm sure if you paused, you could get a lot more context. I thought they would fill in the context, so I didn't bother pausing it to read it. But basically, it seemed like she was catching on to, like, it seemed like there was some deal being made about some antique book or something. Where I'm like, which immediately, when I think of something supernatural and some books and stuff, I'm like, Book of the Dead type of thing? I don't know. But it seemed like it was about some antique stuff, in particular a book, but I could be wrong. And Charles is like, you can't have those letters if you want to, but she's like, no, like, my father left to start, like, his own law business when I was 15. We never heard from him. We did find out that he went off and started another family, but also left them to him. Like, Jesus, dude. So later on, that's where she's coming from, the perspective of, you know, understanding Loa. It's like, Loa is hurting right now, obviously, with, you know, it's like, right, I felt that way when I was her age, and, like, you know, my dad left. So it's like, she just needs to know that what she's feeling is normal, because she's already treated very differently, because, like, the whole Ricketts thing, because Charles is saying, like, someone didn't do their job and basically got spoiled meat, It wasn't even fit for a pig, and that's what led to this. But the doctor was like, yeah, many things could, we have no clear idea what leads to rickets. So he wants to prescribe some treatment, but Charles is like, we went through that, the elixirs and like normal treatments. Is like, I was hoping for something else, but the doctor's like, I can't give anything else. So he had Palmer, Joseph, fashion a new brace for his daughter, making it lighter and made out of leather, a little more maneuverable in it. And she definitely seems like she is walking better, but it is still the thing of like, he wishes he could heal her heart like he could heal her leg. He wishes he could heal her heart just as much as he wishes he could heal her leg too. Like, he can do a little bit in one direction with her leg, but can't really. He probably feels like he can't do anything right. It doesn't know what to say, the right thing to do when it comes to his daughter. But obviously they all went to celebrate All Hallows Eve. I was like, going to that town is bad. But he's also sheltering his children, trying to shelter them from the hate. But he thought, like, right, it's a celebration. But it's like, right, the dude, one of the dudes is like, oh, I can't give you anything, just keep moving on. Someone else gives him stuff, and kids from class, like, throw stuff in their face, like, oh, that should lighten you up. And I love that Abel grabs him, takes off the thing, and he called Abel a darky. She punched him. I thought she just slapped the shit out of him, because it seemed like Honor pimp slapped him, and he like hit the ground. It's like, I'm gonna tell my pa. It's like, go run away, you whiny little bitch. I was like, that's straight up a pimp slap, dude. That's crazy. But it also seemed like, it's like, oh, I'm Abel, I work for your dad. I'm like, oh, it seemed like we're kind of potentially setting up an Honor and Abel type of situation. Maybe that's what that seemed like. That was kind of like an implication, like, oh, we'll potentially see that kind of develop over the course of the season. But then there was also the creepy thing of obviously Susan being in her in her state, and then saying, is Dad here? It's like, don't worry, he's on his way, along with my friend Steven. I'm like, what? They're like, Steven? She's like, yeah, he's gonna be here soon. That window, that's him at the window, Mom, let him in. And then she dies, and I was like, wait, is that supposed to be like she was dying, so she's seeing like technically the other side because her dad is dead? So maybe that's what it's like, oh, my dad came to visit me, and Steven's here. Like, maybe maybe he's the one that was whispering and kind of drawing her to Chapelwaite. And then, like, upon her death, her mother went out there being like, oh, Steven, he's alive and everything. And you have Charles being like, lady, you're crazy, you're out your damn mind. Saying that the priest, that Alice's father is the one spurring a lot of this on. So it's like, right, let's just get out of here. And so Charles decides, like, I'm going to go dig up his body. Hell, I'll drag his dead body through the freaking town just to prove to you how crazy you guys sound. And the moment he digs it up, I was like, oh, boy. And the coffin's empty. Now, my thought is it legitimately empty? Strong possibility. Or is it just that he thinks it's empty, and then he's going to show it to Rebecca, and Rebecca's like, what are you talking about? Your cousin's right there. He's like, no, it was, it's going to make him look a little mad, because it seems like that's the main thing, because it's like, because he had asked her at one point in time, like, what she was talking about. Rebecca's like, oh, like, people who stay there at Chapelwaite end up going insane, or they run away until they get completely driven insane. But she's trying to say, like, oh, his need to, like, his ambitions, you have to have some lunacy to go beyond the normal realms of humans, to kind of, like, go to, like, reaching out, outward beyond what normal people would think. So it takes some form of lunacy. She tries to spin it in a positive light, but with his experience this episode, seeing what he's seen more recently is making him go, yeah, maybe I'm going crazy. Plus, knowing what his dad did and what his dad losing his mind, it's scaring him. Especially even having Loa be like, yo, last episode, like, you've got something inside of you that you're hiding away, and it scares me. So, who knows? But we do see, like, the sheriff's wife ends up getting snatched. Because at first she was like, oh, I'm tired. He's like, whoa, are you tired? He's like, do you have a fever? She's like, it's not the illness. I'm fine. And she ends up getting grabbed by, you can only assume, Steven. So it's like, was he ever dead? Was he resurrected by the worm? Has it, can it control more than one person at a time type of thing of like, is everything prepared to drive? I mean, we are also talking about Stephen King here. So like, is he going full Jack Nicholson, The Shining levels of crazy? Is there something else? Like, that's what I'm curious about. Like, is it a thing of like, Steven is just like a walking, because like I think he's the one that touched Lois' face, the one that was in her room, and his hand was like had no color to it because he's been dead for a while. So, like I said, I'm assuming he's also the one that killed Edward last episode. So, the question is, like, once again, why is that? Is it just kind of like the power of the curse spreading and just murdering the town little by little? Like, is the illness connected? Is that one, like, why is it some of it's the illness and how other bits seem to be straight up him killing? Like, maybe this curse or whatever, the deal that was made, potentially struck with the devil, potentially has twofold to it, that it has to be the illness. Well, because it seems like the illness is mainly, it seems the illness is mainly striking children, whereas Steven is straight up murdering adults. So maybe that's kind of supposed to be the stipulation to it. So, a lot of interesting revelations. I am ultimately curious to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.